Right now on Denver 7 News, a violent police encounter left a 73-year-old woman with a broken arm and a dislocated shoulder. Now a former Loveland officer is facing consequences for doing nothing about it. Between record high inflation and supply chain shortages, many of us are concerned about what's going to happen next in this economy. Well, this morning we'll explain why the just released jobs report is surprising even economic experts. And monkeypox cases keep growing across the country, how Colorado is trying to get ahead of the curve. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jessica Crawford, and we're starting out with breaking news this afternoon. Front Range Community College shut down all 3 of their campuses after receiving a threat. So let's get straight over to Denver 7's Christian Lopez, who's on the scene. And Christian, there's a lot left to be figured out here.
Yeah, there are still a lot of questions. All 3 Front Range Community College campuses are on lockdown, as you just mentioned. We are at the Westminster location, and we just learned a little while ago that several other metro area college campuses are also on lockdown right now. Here you can see that there is a police officer monitoring the entrance. We also saw some signs that were up on the door saying that the school is on lockdown and asking people to return to their vehicles. FRCC tweeting out that all 3 of the campuses were put on lockdown Friday morning due to a potential threat, but they did not specify what that threat was or how it was made. And all of the doors are locked. No one is being allowed inside, but activity inside the building is still going on as usual. So again, we still have a lot of questions, and we are working to figure out exactly what that threat is and how it was made, and we'll continue updating you as we learn more. Live in Westminster, I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
Christian, thank you. And our other top story today, the arrest of Karen Garner was caught on camera more than 2 years ago. It is still horrific to watch. Well, today, Loveland officer Daria Jalali was sentenced after standing by and watching that brutal assault. Denver 7's Veronica Costa was in the courtroom earlier. And Veronica, you're breaking down the time that Jalali will spend in jail.
Yes, and Jalali was sentenced to 45 days to be served consecutively in a jail cell. We know that she's already served 2, so she'll go on to serve that remaining 43. And she was taken into custody inside of a courtroom here behind me. Now, we also know after that jail time sentence, she will go on to serve 3 years of probation. She'll also have to serve some community service as well. And by no means was this a quick sentencing hearing. This was well over an hour and a half. It's because we heard from Karen Garner's son, her daughter, and daughter-in-law. We also heard from the prosecution, the defense, and even Jalali herself. Now, the defense did play a 12-minute long clip of body cam video that showed everything from the moment that Garner was pulled over on the side of the road to the moment she was pinned on top of the car and then put inside of the cop car as well. At the end of the hearing, the judge took about 15 minutes to essentially reprimand Jalali for her actions, and we spoke to Garner's family about what the judge said, how they felt about that, whether they felt justice had been served, and what they didn't feel inside of that courtroom as well.
May not feel that she's as remorseful, but I think it's going to set in pretty quick.
I had wrote out last night several times, failure. She failed in every aspect of what she did. And that was one word that he said that I was like, that's exactly it. It sums up the whole thing. She failed.
And we also got the opportunity to speak with Garner's daughter-in-law, and she made it a point to let us know that this isn't it for them. They definitely want to continue speaking with police departments. They don't want this to ever happen again to anyone. Now, we asked both Garner's daughter and son if they plan on seeing Karen Garner at any point today, though they don't plan on talking about any of this with her. They said the plan is to visit her today. In Fort Collins, I'm Veronica Acosta, Denver 7.
Veronica, thank you. The Loveland Police Department interim police chief, Eric Stewart, has issued a statement after Jalali's sentencing, saying in part, as in the prior sentencing of former officer Austin Hopp, this verdict does not change Miss Garner's wrongful and illegal treatment or the pain that she and her family have experienced. I hope this brings the next level of closure for Miss Garner and for her family. Police in Aurora are investigating after a deadly crash on South Reservoir in East Mansfield left a 41-year-old man dead along with 2 dogs. Police say a Toyota Sequoia left the road, hitting that man and those dogs. The driver of that Toyota left the scene, and police would like to speak with that driver. So if you have information, contact Aurora PD. The Labor Department announced 528,000 jobs were added in July, and now this is a shock considering analysts were expecting less than half of that. The report shows the U.S. economy gained around 528,000 jobs last month. On average, that number this year has been around 456,000. They were hoping for a slower job growth because that and an increase in labor force would be a sign that the labor market is coming back to normal. The market is still recovering from the 21 million jobs that were lost during the pandemic. Millions of people still have not returned to work. Economists say that if more people return to the labor market, that paired with a slowdown in wage growth would create more jobs and lower inflation. Live this morning, Christian Lopez, Denver 7. This report comes just hours after the Inflation Reduction Act inches forward. The Senate will come in to vote on the legislation tomorrow, now that holdout Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema signaled that she will support it. So here's a preview of the Inflation Reduction Act and what it would do. The measure would rein in certain prescription drug prices and impose a minimum 15% tax on big corporations. It would also invest $369 billion towards energy and climate change initiatives. On the Senate floor, Colorado's Michael Bennet urged lawmakers to pass the bill quickly.
Every provision in here is a victory for common sense and a victory for the American people over special interests in the status quo.
The president calling it a critical step towards reducing inflation and the cost of living for America's families. If the bill stays as is, it would be the biggest effort in the U.S. to fight the climate crisis. Environmentalists are excited about the grants that would be made available to communities that have been hit hard by polluters.
There's things for people who, for example, worked in coal mines and they have felt the effects of the damage of the toxics in the air. It's going to put money into that fund. There has to do with Superfund sites. There's multiple Superfund sites just in North Denver alone.
Ian Tafoya heads the group Green Latinos. He just returned from Washington lobbying Congress on this bill, and he says overall this bill, if passed, would be transformational. But
I think it's disappointing to see fossil fuel expansion when we know it's causing the problems. I think it's disappointing to see false solutions, perhaps like carbon capture and nuclear, that communities have blatantly said they don't want in their community. But on a whole, this bill is doing a lot, and it's not over.
The Senate Majority Leader said the chamber will hold its first vote on the bill Saturday, setting the stage for what could be days of debate. Now to the latest on the monkeypox outbreak. Federal health officials declaring a public health emergency. The announcement comes amid criticism of the Biden administration's handling of the outbreak, with more than 7,000 cases confirmed now nationwide. ABC's Rena Roy has the latest.
As monkeypox cases rise coast to coast, the Biden administration declaring a public health emergency in an effort to control the spread.
The public health emergency adds extra tools to our toolbox, allows us to speed up vaccines further, allows us to unlock new funding. So there are a lot of good reasons to do the public health emergency now.
Infections topping 7,000 nationwide, including a few pediatric cases. Demand for the vaccine outweighing supply.
People within the community are very frustrated. And they're frustrated because they're having to call, they get messages, they have to wait for people to call them back. But I need everybody to understand that we are trying.
The CDC says nearly 1.7 million people in the U.S. are now eligible for the monkeypox vaccine. So far, about 600,000 doses have gone out nationwide, with 1.1 million total expected in the coming weeks. But it isn't enough, with 2 doses needed for full protection. Critics say the White House response has been disappointing so far.
Asking the Department of Public Health, asking my PCB, how do I prevent more lesions? And I was told nothing. I just don't think they were prepared.
Nearly all the cases have been among men who have sex with men and their sexual networks. But doctors stress anyone can get the virus.
5 children in the U.S. have been infected.
The virus is primarily spread through skin-to-skin contact. Monkeypox is rarely fatal and symptoms usually go away on their own.
The presentation of monkeypox is variable from person to person. I've seen some patients recover from their illness within 2 weeks, but others, unfortunately, they don't recover until maybe 3, 4, or even 5 weeks later.
The FDA says it's looking into whether it can stretch the vaccine supply by pulling 5 doses out of a single vaccine vial without sacrificing safety or efficacy. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
To fight the disease in Colorado, Governor Jared Polis is calling for more vaccines and vaccination clinics. So far, the state has administered more than 6,000 of these shots. At the beginning of this week, it ordered more than 5,000 additional doses. There will be several vaccination clinics opening this weekend for anyone who wants to go, but you do have to be eligible. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment does require you first fill out a form to determine that eligibility, and you can find that on the CDPHE's website. Coming up on Denver 7 News at 11, a sex trafficking survivor is finally getting the support that she needs.
They gave me and my daughter back our relationship.
In this week's Justice with Jessica, I'm talking to the organization helping people like Jasmine to get a fresh start.